Welcome to the June 2026 edition of the GECF Monthly Gas Market Report. We would like to present a short overview of the main highlights of the report, which include the major developments in the gas market during the last month. In the first 4 months of 2026, aggregated gas consumption in some of the major gas-consuming countries, which account for 75% of global gas demand, decreased by 1% year-on-year to reach 1,073 BCM. Decline was recorded in North America and Southern Asia, while the EU and Middle East showed growth. In May 2026, EU natural gas consumption increased by 2.3% year-on-year, reaching 19 BCM. The increase in gas demand was primarily supported by higher gas demand in the industrial and power sectors. In the meantime, the residential sector recorded a decline driven by warmer weather conditions across large parts of Europe. EU electricity generation increased by 1.3% year-on-year to 198 terawatt-hours in May. Gas-fired generation rose by 5% year-on-year, supported by weaker wind conditions and reduced hydropower output. In April 2026, China's apparent gas demand, which includes gas production plus imports, recorded a third consecutive decline of 3.5% year-on-year to reach 33.5 BCM. For the period Jan-April 2026, Chinese gas consumption declined by 1% year-on-year to 141 BCM, reflecting weaker demand across industrial and power generation sectors. In May 2026, US gas consumption decreased by 0.8% year-on-year to 64 BCM, reflecting lower demand in the residential, commercial and industrial sectors. Residential and commercial gas use declined by 7.6% and 9.8% year-on-year, respectively. Industrial gas demand also slipped by 1.3% year-on-year, driven by softer manufacturing activity, indicating that economic fluctuations are increasingly influencing overall seasonal energy requirements. In April 2026, global gas production was estimated to have declined by 3.6% year-on-year to stand at 338 BCM. Global production was heavily impacted by the supply shock in the Middle East as a result of the ongoing geopolitical conflict and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, with the region's supply declining by more than one-third on a year-on-year basis. This was mainly driven by the large decline in the region's main gas and LNG producers, with Qatar facing the largest reduction. On the other hand, the sustained increase in the North American gas production partially offset the greater impact of the Middle Eastern supply disruption on global gas supply, with the US production leading that growth. European gas production recorded a 3.1% year-on-year decline in gas production to 15.2 BCM. This decrease in the European output was mainly driven by lower gas production in Norway, the UK, and the Netherlands. However, the magnitude of the overall European production decline was limited by the higher supply from Denmark's gas production. In April 2026, China's gas production maintained its growing trend to reach 21.9 BCM, representing a 2.1% year-on-year increase, driven by the commissioning of new gas projects. Meanwhile, in May 2026, US total gas production continued its growth trend, to record a rise of 4.1% year-on-year and stand at 97 BCM. This growth reflected the favorable market dynamics, driven by the robust Henry Hub gas prices, along with the increased feed gas directed to LNG exports terminals. In May 2026, the EU countries imported 12.4 BCM of PNG, which was 2% more than the previous month, and 2% more than 1 year ago. After 5 months of 2026, cumulative PNG imports rose by 2% year-on-year, reaching 61 BCM. Import volumes increased across all regional entry points, with the sole exception of the Netherlands. Imports of regasified LNG from the UK to mainland Europe increased by 43% to reach 1.9 BCM. In April 2026, China imported 6.6 BCM of PNG, a 15% rebound month-on-month. PNG accounted for 58% of China's gas imports during April, the highest share in a decade. In 2026 thus far, cumulative PNG imports reached 25 BCM, falling 2% year-on-year. Global LNG trade remained severely constrained in May 2026 as the ongoing Middle East conflict choked export volumes from Qatar and the UAE, driving a 4.6% year-on-year contraction in global imports to 32.9 million tons. While this global decline showed signs of stabilizing compared to April, Europe bore the brunt of the supply crunch, as reduced Middle Eastern flows forced flexible US and West African spot cargoes to divert to premium-priced Asian markets. On the supply side, global LNG exports continued to decline, falling by 5.8% year-on-year to 32.6 million tons, driven by lower exports from Qatar and the UAE, which were partially offset by stronger exports from higher exports from Canada, Malaysia, Nigeria, Norway, Russia, and the US. During May 2026, the persistent negative winter-summer spread and widening JKM-TTF arbitrage continued to disincentivize commercial gas injections, severely constraining the pace of the continent's storage refill. The monthly average underground gas storage level in the EU rose to 38 BCM, which represents 36% of the region's capacity and stands at 13 BCM below the 5-year average. In Asia, the combined LNG stocks in Japan and South Korea were estimated at 8 BCM, which was 3.5 BCM below the 5-year average, due to ongoing Middle East LNG export restrictions. In the US, the monthly average storage level climbed to 68 BCM or 50% of capacity, which was 3.5 BCM higher than the 5-year average. Gas and LNG spot prices posted a modest recovery after retreating from multi-year highs in the previous month. Market sentiment continued to be shaped by the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, exerting upward pressure on spot prices. TTF prices increased by 4% month-on-month to $16.20 per million British thermal units, while Northeast Asia spot LNG prices increased by 9% month-on-month to $18 per million British thermal units. In North America, HH gas prices followed a similar trend, rising by 6% month-on-month to $2.90 per million British thermal units. Looking ahead, spot prices are expected to remain firm, supported by seasonal increases in gas demand for cooling as the summer months approach. Thank you for watching this short video presentation on the June 2026 edition of the GECF Monthly Gas Market Report. We invite you to download the full report from our website at www.gecf.org, or you can scan the QR code.